On this episode of It's VUCA, the Secret of Living in the 21st Century, we're essentially going to unpack the Navy SEAL secret of dealing with uncertainty with former Navy SEAL retired commander and CEO of Unbeatable Mind, Mark Divine. And I want to start by saying, in these extreme uncertainty conditions, these kind of both social and economic, and Mark, you kind of touched on this a little bit, individuals and companies alike either freeze or fail, right? Fight, flight or freeze. And humans generally use two of these decision-making strategies when faced with uncertainty, which is either exploitation or exploration. I want to touch on that too on this episode. So
we're seeing a lot of exploitation going on in the world right now, aren't we?
Big time.
Who would have thought that the last time we talked, there was not a global war going on, but right now there is. I mean, look what's going on. It's crazy. And how quickly that happened.
It's totally
VUCA.
True.
Totally
VUCA. Yeah, and I totally want to dive into that. So I'm Mike Schindler, the host. I'm joined by Chris Nolan, 3-time Emmy Award winner, Chris Nolan, and then of course CEO Mark Divine, Navy SEAL Mark Divine. So Mark, welcome to the show.
Yeah, it's great to see you guys again.
Good to see you, Mark. Always great.
So I want to dive in because we started talking on some good stuff, but I want the audience to know exactly who you are. So I'm going to just kind of cut over your bio a little bit. And it's so impressive to me every time I read it. And I think it's important because you're such an authority in this area. But at 26, you graduated as honor man, #1 ranked trainee of SEALs Buds, class 170. But that was after you served as an accountant, if I recall. So there's a whole story behind that. Your leadership and coaching program for the SEALs was so effective that it's now being used outside of the Navy by top CEOs, Fortune 100 companies, USA Olympics, elite universities, major sports franchises, celebrities. I mean, the list goes on. 5 best-selling books, including the latest book, Staring Down the Wolf, 7 leadership commitments that forge elite teams, which I got on my bookcase. Great book.
Great. Awesome.
Yes, super book. 5 successful companies: Unbeatable Mind, SEAL Fit, NavySeals.com, US CrossFit, the award-winning Coronado Brewing Company in California. You were also featured in our documentary, It's VUCA, the Secret to Living in the 21st Century. You've helped individuals and organizations navigate chaos and uncertainty for years. So you're kind of like this uncommon man, Mark. We were joking earlier that I try to get up to your 300 burpees a day. I can't get there yet. So I got 2 questions for you before we kick off to the real meat and potatoes of the stuff. Is number 1, is there anything you can't do? And number 2, what you'll share today, is that something that anybody can pick up and implement into their life? So start with the first one. Is there anything you can't do? Is there something that you haven't done yet?
No, there's definitely things that I won't do.
Oh.
I can think of a lot of things I won't do. People think I probably jump out of airplanes still, and I don't, because that's kind of risky.
Yeah.
And now that I'm married and have kids and all this, so I'm still a risk taker, but I choose wisely on where to take those risks. So there's things that I won't do, but I also believe that the human being has the potential, extraordinary potential, and can do things that most people listening would not imagine. Right. So it's incredible what is possible when you decide to, direct your mind towards something, and you learn some skillful means on how to train your mind in order to do certain things. And I believe, as we were talking before we started the recording, the mind is pretty much everything. Like, the mind is the creator of your body. It's the creator of the conditions in your life, everything. And so if you want an extraordinary life, start with the quality of your mind, the quality of your thinking, and start to, think as an extraordinary human being, and then the life will follow. So, yeah, I mean, I think, but there's certain limitations. Like, we got to work within the constructs of the current physical reality of the universe. Right. So I can't defy gravity. I can't fly through the air yet, like a yogi. Yeah. And I can't fly into space until Elon Musk gives me a spot on SpaceX, or someone else. So that's on my list for sure.
Wow, that's incredible.
And the second question is, even every single Navy SEAL, including myself, started with the first push-up or first set of push-ups.
Right.
But there was an intention to direct our energies toward becoming a Navy SEAL. And so when all that energy was directed like a laser beam on that one, lofty goal. And then we broke that down into what needed to be done to get there in terms of our physical aptitude and our mental strength, and also whatever skills were required. And then we took enormous effort every day to train the body mind to be able to have the opportunity to do that. Then what was different about us is we stood out because we had that kind of intentionality and the capacity to break it down into something I could do today to move toward that goal. And then the motivation to continue on and just do the work. And that's the only thing that separates us from everybody else, as Navy SEALs. Now, barring, physical conditions or, other things, like you have to have some basic raw material, but that's probably like, 20% of the game. It's 80%, 80% mental, 19% raw material, and 1% physical.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. It's usually 20 and 80. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah. So everybody, what we're going to talk about today, whatever that's going to be, because I have no preconceived notions.
Yeah.
If you've got a mind, you can do it. And if you're listening to this, there's a good chance you've got a mind.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
It's so good. So that's encouraging to people, though. So, I mean, we talk about VUCA. That's one of the things that we talk about, the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, everything, in the world was turned upside down those last couple of years. And people, I think many people are struggling with the uncertainty. They're struggling with the mindset piece, Mark. So what are one or two simple things that people could do? Like, we hear this, I'm overwhelmed, or I'm anxious, or, we see that the depression levels have gone up, right? Anxiety levels. So what are some simple things that people can do today where they can wrestle back their mind? I mean, you're talking the only thing that separates, SEALs from the common person is mindset.
Right.
Right. So what is one or two things
same thing? I mean, you made a comment, the world turned upside down or inside out. It certainly wasn't my perspective. So the very first skill in mental toughness is to have a broader perspective and to train yourself to see things for what they really are. And I'm not talking about politics of COVID or vaccinations.
Yeah.
But the way things really are is that things change, and they can change fast. And the perception that things are always the same is a false perception. And so when you recognize that things always change, nothing's permanent, then you prepare for that impermanence. And in the preparation of impermanence, when you have a big thing that changes, it's no big deal, because you're like, oh yeah, okay, so this is a big thing. Here comes something that they're going to call a pandemic. How is this going to affect my life? Well, were it not for the government shutdowns, it wouldn't have affected my life at all. Right?
Yeah.
So I had to deal with the government shutdowns. Why is that? Because I knew that I take care of myself so well, physically, mentally, emotionally, structurally, that the virus isn't going to affect me. And it didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, maybe along that line, I just want to say, by the way, you were great at film, and it was great directing you, and it's VUCA. And one of the things that I wanted to tell you is that a lot of the reactions that we're getting from the movie are that they're actually seeing, and I think this is because you were kind of probably one of the heart and souls of the movie, right? And they love the consciousness that you brought to the movie, right? The spirituality. In fact, a lot of people said that this shows the military in a light they've never seen before.
Oh, that's cool.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, really, and I don't know if did you send Mike some of did you send Mark some of those comments? They're pretty amazing.
Yeah, I should.
Things then, so they've never seen the military portrayed that way, with the heart and the spirituality. So that's kind of the warrior mindset you're talking about,
Right.
right? And as I said before we started, somebody should do a documentary on you with the way that you talk about this stuff, because you really do have an expansive view of the world and the military and spirituality and consciousness. So we were talking about creativity, right? So how does that work with all this? How can we be more creative with our warrior mindset, right?
Okay, thanks, Chris. So first of all, let's do a documentary on the warrior archetype. That would be a lot of fun. I challenge you.
Oh, love it. Warrior architect.
All right, because
Nice.
everyone's got a warrior archetype. Now, some people, especially men, have it as a dominant, right? And so for me, what exposed that to me was meditation, right? So if I hadn't sat down on a meditation bench when I was 21 years old and started a process of curating the quality of my thinking and getting control of my mind and emotions, and then being able to to travel the road inward, deeper into the source of, all power, all creativity, we wouldn't be having this conversation today, because I'd be either a partner at Ernst & Young or Coopers & Lybrand, PricewaterhouseCoopers now, or I'd be back running the family business. So back to the archetype, what I found when I was sitting on that meditation bench after a period of time, right? This is not meditation is not like taking a pill and having, like the limitless drug, suddenly having all this power. It accrues over time in several different ways. One of the ways is insights. And so I had insight that my archetypal journey was meant to be a warrior, first as a warrior athlete, kind of adventurous guy. And that manifested itself as a SEAL. And then later on as a teacher of warriorship, I became a warrior scholar, warrior teacher. And that's what led to my books. And now the warrior archetype is really showing up in my desire and drive to educate others, to make the world a better place, by educating them that the only way we're going to do that is by changing our mindsets one person at a time at scale. And as we develop our mindset to be more inclusive, more whole, more integrative, more spiritually aligned, and physically strong as well, and emotionally mature, then naturally what happens is that we eradicate fear. We tap into our innate goodness, which is inclusive, and it ends separation. It ends conflict. It ends, ethnocentric finger pointing and missile, waving at each other.
Yeah.
And so I see a future where at scale, we have hundreds of millions and 1 billion people who are thinking this way. And then they demand that our leaders have that mindset as well, or that level of awareness. Right now, there's no prerequisites for the leaders. And so it's the idiot with the biggest fist and the most manipulative jerks who end up in power.
Yeah.
And they're wielding violence over the rest of humanity. And we see that going on in Russia and Ukraine, and God forbid that escalates. I see a future where that, humanity steps up and says, fuck that. That's not happening anymore on our watch. Right. And so anyways, that all comes from meditation. It all comes from people turning inward and accessing their massive creative potential and innate goodness. So fear is a aspect of our brain. Goodness is an aspect of our being, our heart, our being, our soul. And the brain is wired with our limbic system and our reptilian brain, basically to be fearful for survival. And yet and unless you train your brain to get out of that limbic system, what Mike called the fight or flight, that reactive, reflexive, put your fists up or run mode, then it owns you, right? The fear wolf always wins because it's being fed constantly. Yeah. Every time you flip on network news and watch what's going on in Russia, Ukraine, or with the economy and inflation, with the political fighting and this and that and the other thing, you're feeding the fear wolf, right? Every time you drink a soda, you're feeding the fear wolf. Every time you eat sugar, you're feeding the fear wolf. Every time you react negatively to somebody because you think that somebody did something to you because you're the victim, you're feeding the fear wolf. And you're keeping yourself in a state of fight or flight. You're keeping yourself hyper aroused, which keeps your limbic system dominant, meaning you're literally living from your reptilian brain, the oldest brain aspect of our brain, right? And your neocortex, what Daniel Kahneman calls your system 2 thinking brain, the part of you that's supposed to be in charge, is completely overridden by the reptilian fear-based mind. So you have to train yourself to get out of that. That's why Navy SEALs run toward the sound of gunfire, because we train our minds to shut down that reptilian brain so that fear doesn't overwhelm us and negativity doesn't overwhelm us. So we can look at a situation that is the most complex and dangerous thing in the world, and we can positively say to ourselves and to our teammates, we got this, right? We can do this. We can solve this challenge, and we can kick ass and take names. And then we go do it. But there's a lot of training that goes on behind that, right? There's the training of moment to moment monitoring your thoughts and emotions. There's the training of acting like a mental sniper, which, you're going to shoot a negative thought as soon as you see it inside your mind, and always turn toward the positive solution. There's the arousal control of always interdicting and intercepting the latest stress trigger, whether it's a mortar coming in or whether it's just if you're in the office, your boss dropping another bomb on you. And so the arousal control is getting control of your breathing, which is, frankly, one of the skills we can lead people with today is that box breathing, which we talked about on the documentary. When you practice slowing down your breathing through your nose to a count of 5 count in, 5 count out. And then when you're in a calm setting in the morning ritual, evening ritual, or your meditation as a prep for your meditation, adding a 5 count hold to the inhale and the exhale. So it's 5 count in, 5 count hold, 5 count out, 5 count hold. So now that's a 3 breath per minute cycle. And you're breathing through your nose, you're massaging your vagus nerve, you're triggering your parasympathetic nervous system, which is counteracting the sympathetic fight or flight. And when you do this every day as a daily practice, you end up retraining your brain so that your sympathetic, limbic system is not in charge anymore, right? You give power back to your neocortex, to your executive function, or what I call the strategic mind, so you can make better decisions. In the SEALs, we first start training that with the acronym PBTA. We say first, anything that happens that puts you in a state of hyperarousal, pause. Just by pausing and not reacting, you interrupt that fear, that fear-based fight or flight response. Second, breathe. And how you breathe is important. Now we're going to slow everything down, slowly inhale through the nose and exhale through the nose. 5 count in, 5 count out, 6 breaths per minute. And that is the arousal control. It keeps you in that calm state, controlling that arousal response. And then we're going to think. How do we think? We use the OODA loop. Mm-hmm. We observe what's happening. We orient ourselves to it. We make a decision. We'll check that decision with our teammates, make sure we're not in some fantasy land. And then we act. And when we act with explosiveness. We act with pinpoint precision on the right target, the right time. And we act with micro goals, meaning we take the smallest step towards success in that moment that we can possibly conceive of. And we do that. And then we reinvigorate the OODA loop again. We observe how that went. This is the feedback loop. We reorient it, we make a new decision, and then we act again. So I guess you could say, instead of pause, breathe, think, and act, it's more like PABUDA. Pause, breathe, observe, orient, decide, and act. Very, very powerful training tool. And once you get really good at this, then it becomes real time, right? It just happens automatically. The breathing, you interdict with the pause, you breathe deeply, you run through the OODA loop, you take the action, and then you just keep on moving. And so we would say that we call that fast twitch iteration. You make decisions faster and faster and faster. Your OODA loop tends to be faster than the enemy's. If you're not, fighting an enemy, then let's say your enemy is COVID, or your enemy is your business cycle, or whatever, your competition. You start to think faster and faster because you're not thinking in a linear manner anymore. You start to think in a very reflexive circular pattern of iteration, right? Just constant improvement, trying to figure out what works, what doesn't. And so the other piece about this, like one of the reasons why SEALs are so darn successful, is we don't care if we fail. We want to fail. We expect to fail, but we fail small. We don't fail big, right? So by chunking things down to the smallest arc and getting really creative with how we navigate that arc to success, we expect to fail, because then we learn another way how not to do it. And we take that information and then we do it again. And this time we might succeed or we might fail. We'll learn from it and then we'll do it again. And that time, by the third time, we'll get it right. But we haven't jeopardized the entire mission, right? So we have this way to iterate on the fly, learn on the fly while we're moving relentlessly toward mission success.
So Mark, I want to jump in here because all this is amazing. And I'm wondering, how do we train that earlier? it, because, most people spend more time, working on a 2-week vacation than they do their own mindset, right? I mean, they're planning that down to the T and to the minute and to the finances and all that. And that, you ask them, what does your best year look like? Or, what does it mean to be you? And they don't have an answer for that.
Yeah.
And I think part of that's education. So how do we inspire a nation? Because what you're talking about,
we've got to completely retool, Mike, our educational system because it's built for the 20th century.
Yeah.
And it's ridiculous that we're still teaching knowledge that you can find at a moment by Googling it, right? And speaking it into Siri, or in the future, you're going to have robots and AI that do all the knowledge work, right? So it used to be that, we went from the industrial age into the knowledge worker age. We've moved past that now toward the, what we were talking about earlier. We're in the age of conceptualization. So the master skill that we need to teach kids these days is how to be creative, how to be spontaneous, how to solve problems fast, like I'm talking about, not just filling their heads up with knowledge that they can, say, hey, Siri, what's the answer to this problem? Or, tell me about Ukraine, right? You don't have to memorize all that crap. Remember, we used to have the World Book Encyclopedia.
Yeah,
that was our Google, right? We'd go there and thumb through the
that
darn
was
thing.
Google. Yeah, well, the interesting thing is, and I love where you're going. And I think we were saying that it's hard to train creativity, and I think you gave us you got a pretty good shot at it. That was pretty cool. The thing that is interesting is that there's so much gamification in our world about how we're interacting with things, but there's not that collaborative thing that you're talking about where we get that mindset out there. You say it's education. Is there any other way that you think we can get kind of more of a collaborative interest in some
I think you're going to see technology solve this, because you see this with, I'm bullish on metaverse, because look at what's happening with interactive games like Fortnite or Minecraft, right? So let's take these into an educational setting. You have teams that are solving complex problems.
Love it.
The most creative teams win. And so, okay, how do I win? If it's gamified, I want to win. And so I have to figure out how to be creative, and you have to be collaborative. Creativity and collaboration go hand in hand, right? But first we have to train our minds to slow down and to turn inward and to tap, the vast reservoir. Imagine, like, inside of what we perceive to be inside of our body is this vast reservoir of creative potential.
Right.
But all of our attention is out here. So first we got to stop putting our attention outside us and spend 20 minutes minimum a day, an hour ideally, or 2 20-minute sessions where we turn our eyes inward and we're looking for that vast reservoir of creative potential and creative expression. So we do that individually first. Then we engage with our teams in these highly collaborative problem-solving environments that are virtual simulations of the real world. And because we've trained our minds to be spontaneous and creative through the meditation practices, when we bring it to the team, we have that potential. And because we're really, really engaged in this immersive environment with our AR or VR headsets on, and we're solving problems on how to build a city or to fend off that or to create something new. And it's being done collaboratively with sometimes large groups of people. You have the damnedest things that just come to you, right? Yeah. So this person sparks that idea. You grab something from that person over there. This person who's got a completely different discipline or way of thinking throws that in, and suddenly the team spontaneously creates solutions that no one individual could possibly create.
Awesome.
I mean, you're seeing early versions of that with crowdsourcing and crowdfunding and not crowdfunding necessarily, but crowdsourcing solutions that no expert team could figure out on their own. But you have different disciplines. You see this with the X Prize type things that Peter Diamandis has created.
Yeah.
Teams come together from across different disciplines, and biologists apply their perspective, computer coders provide their perspective, engineers theirs, and suddenly they have a whole new solution. So I think that you're going to see education popping up that is going to be a lot like the holodeck or the construct in the Matrix, that's leveraging VR and AR, where the education is really about how to unlock creativity and solve problems as opposed to just downloading knowledge and regurgitating knowledge. And
I think
it has
that's
to
so
happen
important.
quickly because,
Yeah.
you know, you guys have done a lot of futuristic, and I'm sure you've had futuristic thinkers on the show. We don't have a whole lot of time, right? There's not a whole lot of time before AGI or artificial general intelligence is figured out. And you have one or more master AIs
Right.
that can solve solve more problems than the collective brain power of humanity.
Yeah.
And things are going to change fast when that happens. And our whole nature, what it means to be human, will change. And our hope is, right, that those become partners, right, and not overlords. But you know, people say, "Oh, that's in some weird, distant, long future." No, it's in our lifetimes.
Yeah.
The three of us, it's in our lifetimes.
Yeah.
Right. We're talking, you know, I was at an interview between Peter Diamandis and Eric Schmidt, the, you know, former CEO and chairman of Google. He's talking about 10 years, this happening.
Yeah.
Now, maybe it's
Singularity.
20,
Yeah.
maybe it's 30, but you know, with longevity and everything, we'll be around in 30 years. We'll all, everyone listening to this will be human. We'll be here as a human. Hopefully not some hybrid, you know, but, if that's what comes to pass, is a good thing that we can merge with AI and we can merge with technology like that in order to keep pace, then so be it, right? Let's just hope that it's positive, right? And we don't lose our humanity. I kind of veered off track there, but
No, it was
it's
great.
all happening fast. That's not
I
my
think
point. Is don't put your head in the sand and think, oh, someone else is going to solve this problem. No, it's up to us as a global population to have these discussions, to get serious. If you've been thinking, well, I've always wanted to start a school, start a freaking school. Now's the time to start a school. Leverage, you know, VR, AR, you know, collaborative work environments. Figure it out, right? We can't just wait for, you know, certainly governments aren't going to solve the problem. They're part of the problem.
Well, that goes back to what you were saying, you know, Mark, where we have really, truly got it. We can't be afraid to fail.
That's
Right. We've got to, you know, we've got to be afraid to just be, you know, live on the edge, you know, the edge of the comfort zone, as we talk about on the film. And certainly as you talk about, you know, facing fear of moving off the X and just doing it, right. Doing it smartly, but doing it with a tribe of people too. I think that's super important. So, you know, people will listen to this and are listening to this and they'll say, yeah, but Mark, I'm super busy. Like I haven't got time for this. This stuff doesn't affect me now. And what would your answer be to that? I mean, you know, flat out, it does affect you now, but what would your answer to be to somebody that says, yeah, Mark, I want to change, but I don't have time to change?
Yeah. So my answer is, if you don't change, you'll be out of a job, period. Because every doing job is going to get outsourced eventually. And so if you have a fundamental job where you're just doing things, even most jobs that, you know, CEOs and executives do will be done by algorithms and outsource. So you have to be very, very thoughtful with where you spend your time. So a good chunk of your time should be retraining your brain so you don't get outsourced. You know, so I block off 6 to 10 every morning to train my mind. Well, and I consider my body part of my mind. So that includes my physical training, my mental training, emotional training, and some longevity work, right? So I do all that in the morning. I don't do anything work related, quote unquote, until 10 a.m. And then I work for maybe 4 to 6 hours a day because I'm very, very careful about what I let on my schedule. Said another way, I'm radically focused on the right things for the right reasons and highly leveraged with how I spend my time. So that's how everyone needs to think. It's not how many hours you work, it's how much mental power and focus you can accrue to the work that you do. And I would suggest that you'd be way more effective if you were able to radically focus on one thing and just worked an hour every day and got that thing done than if you diffuse your energy across 20 different things and spent 10 to 15 hours doing it. And then, you know, we're stressed out because you didn't finish your task list. I think the average person, executives included, they just task saturate themselves and they're just playing whack-a-mole all day long and they're exhausted by the end of the day.
Burnout.
You outsource everything, you delegate everything if you're the leader, and you focus on the quality of your thinking and understand. A good chunk of your time is to ask yourself and to answer, what's the most important thing that I need to do today that's going to move the dial? It's going to move me toward mission success. And then you just radically focus on that one thing until it's done. And then if you have time, move on to the second thing. Anything else that comes in your schedule that interferes with that, right? You just shoot it like a sniper. People say, do you play golf? I'm like, I couldn't possibly imagine playing golf right now because it's a shit ton of time.
Yeah.
Right? Now, I know some people do a lot of work on the golf course and they have fun with it, and that's great. For me, I can't afford the time. Not because I'm too busy doing stuff, because I'm too busy training my mind and preparing for the future. And I don't want to do that on a golf course, right? So I don't allow that stuff onto my schedule, right? And I don't allow frivolous meetings. I'm but radically focused. And I think I'm giving you a long-winded answer to your question, Mike, but you got to get more focused on the right things for the right reasons, and then declutter everything else that distracts you.
Yeah.
Right? So for me, that means boards. I don't sit on boards of directors. I don't sit on committees. I don't, fortunately, I don't have to run around and do the helicopter parent thing. My son is 22. I just radically focus on training and my most important target every day, and then time with my wife and my son. That's awesome. And reading and Aikido, which is one of my joys, is martial arts training.
Wow.
I got one little quick question here, just a follow up. So that was a great thing, Mike, about the individual. What do you think that the biggest mistakes businesses are making right now? Because you work with a lot of businesses and companies.
Well,
organizations.
Businesses. Okay, so the biggest mistake is to continue doing the same thing and expect different results. Yeah. Right? Definition of insanity. So business organizations need to become what Robert Keegan, a Harvard professor, calls a deliberately developmental organization. The organization has to be the primary vehicle for the individual's growth and the team's growth, right? And when that happens, then you're going to see teams come together spontaneously. Organizations will become very flat teams of teams, just like General McChrystal talked about and created over in Afghanistan, and be able to solve like really intractable problems, and to be able to move very fast. So companies got to get out of the old linear way of thinking and strategic planning, and they have to give power to their teams and the individuals, and push it down as close to the reality loop as possible. And that, what I mean by that is where the action is with the customer out in the field, and empower those teams that are closest to where the action is to make decisions. But in order to do that, you got to train them and then trust them. And so the organization will be primarily a teaching learning organization that happens to do business. I think that's what needs to happen in the future. And our organization, Seal Fit and Unbeatable, we help people become DDOs and create these rich growth environments. And I don't use the term learning, because learning, we talked about this briefly in the VUCA film. Learning is generally horizontal. It's like, give me this skill, give me that skill. I want to learn that. Great. It doesn't change who you are. When I'm talking about a DDO, deliberately development organization, we're talking about growth, and growth is changing who you are, which then allows you to deploy those horizontal skills more effectively and more completely. And so growth is what we call vertical development, because you change who you are, you change your level of development or your stage of development. And those stages have been mapped pretty clearly by developmental psychologists and integral theorists and whatnot. Yeah. So the average company might be at a conventional level where they're still kind of task oriented, achievement oriented, transactional. And in order to thrive in the future, you have to move to a post-conventional stage where the primary or the dominant level of all the individuals are post-conventional. And you're starting to see those movements, with conscious capitalism and, and a lot of the world's problems being solved not by governments or 501c3 nonprofits, but by entrepreneurs who have a social drive to solve a problem, who create a solution that can impact the globe, right? Like the Deca unicorn companies that are, propping up to solve sustainable issues or to solve, complex problems that have evaded governments and other corporations for years. Or maybe the governments and those corporations created the problem, I should say.
Yeah.
This is so good. Mark, I know we're going beyond our time, and I want to mention, you got a 30-day ebook, Mind and Body Transformation Guide. How do people get their hands on this? Because a lot of what you're talking about, I think, is in that guide. It's a starter guide for sure, but how do people get in touch with you? How do they find you? How do they be part of what you're doing?
First, watch the documentary. It's VUCA.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, thank you.
And guys, my website, markdevine.com, has pretty much all the information. If you're interested in doing the harder Navy SEAL style training, which is extraordinary, it's not just for SEALs, it's for everybody. SEALFit.com. And then our Unbeatable Mind training, the free book or the free course you're talking about is at unbeatablemind.com/challenge. It's a 30-day course. We also have a brand new community. So just reach out to us. Go check that out, unbeatablemind.com/challenge. And if you are interested in joining our community, we're just launching a whole new community app, which has our fundamental year-long course called Foundation Course. And, has great content being created every day by myself, by my coaches, and also by the community. It's extraordinary. And it's only going to be $39 a month. So we're going to be launching that actually this next couple of weeks. And so if you're interested in that, either pay attention to the Unbeatable website, get on our email list, or send a note to info@unbeatablemind.com.
This is so awesome. So Mark, parting thoughts. If you're working with somebody and they're like, listen, this is all good, but I need to know the first thing I need to do. What is it? What would you say is the first thing somebody needs to do?
Press pause on everything. Press pause and then breathe, right? So start the PBTA or Pabuta loop, pause, breathe. How are you going to breathe? I already described it. Box breathing. There's two skills there. One is box breathing. The other is tactical breathing. Box breathing you do in the morning. You do it driving to work. You do it before a meeting. And that's the preparatory practice of calming your mind and de-stressing your body. That's inhale, 5 count, hold your breath, 5 count, exhale, 5 count, hold your breath through the nose, full lung, full exhale, full inhale, full exhale. It's extraordinary practice. Just 5 minutes will change your brain state. Over time, you're training your mind to be clearer and more focused. And I don't have the time to go into obviously why that is. And then the second is just dropping the holds. And this is the Navy SEAL tactical breathing. And that's while you're in the shit, while you're in the meeting, and this becomes your default mode. 5 count inhale through the nose, 5 count exhale. You train that every day until it becomes your neurological patterning. You rewire your neurological patterning so that your natural breath state is in through the nose, out through the nose, 5 count in, 5 count out, 6 breaths per minute. And the studies are now in showing that that's also the most optimal breath pattern for health, for homeostatic balance, for longevity, for weight loss, everything. It's a miracle cure, and it's free. So not only does it cover your physical health, but also it trains your mind to be more calm and more focused. So it's a 1-2 punch, and it's free.
Man, I love that. I so love that. Mark, I on behalf of Chris and me, I got to say, thank you. Yeah.
You guys are awesome. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's always so good. So guys, be sure you check out markdevine.com. Check him out. I'm telling you, I've known Mark for years, and every time I visit with Mark, I learn something new, extremely powerful. So thank you, Mark, again. And we look forward to having you on again soon.
You got to work on that warrior architect.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
I'll let you take the lead when you're ready to roll. Let me know. And you guys have done such a good job on that documentary. Maybe we just do part 2 with.
You got it. Sounds great.
Archetype.
I'm there.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
Guys.
All right, guys.
Thank you, buddy.
Thanks, Mark.
Take care, guys.